This session, we spotlight Malaysia's first and newly minted unicorn, Carsome. Listen in as co-founder and group CEO Eric Cheng shares about the roller coaster journey of joining the billion-dollar club and how they gained the trust and confidence of entrepreneur turned investor Khailee Ng, managing partner of 500 Global, to bet on them from the get-go. Here are our speakers. Eric Cheng, co-founder and group CEO of Carsome, and Khailee Ng, managing partner of 500 Global. I can't wait to hear this discussion. Get your notepad, iPads all ready because we're about to take some notes. Enjoy the conversation.
Thanks, Lenora. Good to see you again as well. It is Friday, everybody. Chill out. Both Eric and I are in our usual t-shirts, right? So anyone in the audience right now, this is going to be true blue fireside chat. We're just going to really hang out. We thought it'd be a really fun thing to do, talking about the ecosystem, but not so much about the ecosystem today in a startup sense, but really understanding the habitat that we grew up in, the ecosystem that before even startups began, before we even the term startup was even invented, talking more about our Malaysian upbringing, our classical kind of Malaysian upbringing. And then from there, kind of traverse into where our minds are today and how do we kind of see things going into the future. Kind of kicking it off, Eric and I were kind of prepping a little bit earlier, and it's kind of funny that both of us actually went to the same high school. So it's SMK Damansara Jaya. And it's the craziest thing because a lot of the entrepreneurs who came from SMK Damansara Jaya and similar schools, there's nothing extraordinary about that school per se. And at the time, how we led, right? I don't know about you, Eric, but I was definitely not a top student. I was definitely not ambitious about anything whatsoever. So I thought it'd be good for us to kind of unpack who we were then. What was the ecosystem that actually brought up entrepreneurs like us at the time, right? So Eric, who were you in high school? Who were you in Form 1 to Form 5? What kind of person were you in SMDJ?
Hey, yeah, and happy Friday, everyone. Yeah, so Khailee, I'm really keen to know, right, who you are and how you look like back in high school. I know you're my senior, but I never really get a chance to meet you. But I think a little bit about myself. Like you, I was never the top student, right? I'm probably at the very, very bottom of the class, and the reason being that is I never really enjoyed studying back then. Instead, I play a lot of games. I was always in the cafes, playing Counter-Strike, and aspire to become an esport champion, right? Representing the country. And I think that kind of flows into my yearbook, during the very end of it. When people think of a nickname for me and put it into the yearbook, my nickname was David Copperfield. Because I'm just missing classes so much that, they do not know where I am. It's this guy gets sometimes here, sometimes not. Yeah, it's David Copperfield.
So how did you ponting, right? How did you skip class? Did you jump over the wall at the back, or do you just not show up in the first place? You just went straight. How do your parents know about your absenteeism and your magician, your disappearing David Copperfield moves?
Yeah. I think being an entrepreneur kind of starts from there, right? You kind of problem solve. I don't even remember the ways that I can, multiple ways to get through and try to get out of the school, right? But yeah, I think eventually my parents found out, and it wasn't a great, it wasn't a great situation to be in, right? So, but I think ultimately there was, one of those moments that, when I look back, it's kind of fun to really look back and see, what you have done in the school, you met some friends and all. And very fortunate to know that, SMDJ also have a lot of entrepreneurs. It's not just you and me, right? As you know, there's a couple of others also in the startup scene, which turns out to be a great thing, right? For me, especially as I embark on, creating my own company, the next 10, 20 years. And so, yeah.
I think it's interesting, this whole high school aspect, because when we kind of, of course, you and I and a lot of the entrepreneurs who are of a similar cut from the same cloth, right? Let's say in Grab, co-founder Khailee Ng, she's from SMDU. So another 500 backed company, Carsome, so Jeff is from SMDJ, Fui is from SMDU, and then let's say Salty Customs, let's say even a lot of the folks who are the top executives at Grab, Lim Kelj, he's built up so much of Grab operationally, and he was like a troop leader back then, in the Troop 37 in Scouts in high school. So sometimes we talk, right? We said that, hey, was any part of that upbringing useful at all? right? Like, what was it that actually contributed? Because there was a certain ecosystem. So here's the thing that I noticed. I think that the one thing about that type of an upbringing, right, not specifically just glorifying one school, was that it had you not just focus on how you say, you not just focus on grades. I think for a lot of us, all of us were like, we were given enough space to be a bit naughty, so to speak. And then so we're like trying to find hacks around the system, like very often. But not to say that everyone who went through the same pontinging became founded a unicorn as well, right? So I'd love to kind of like hear about how that gradually kind of like led you on the path, right? Because you like playing games. Eventually in college, like you pursued your ambition on Counter-Strike. Like just build that bridge for us, right? How does that pontinging, that kind of absenteeism in school translate eventually to actually forming a startup?
Yeah, yeah. I think gaming is kind of my hobby, right? And very often like you like to have your hobby to become your own profession, something that you can earn a living. And I guess one of the things when I was studying is I never really see very good reason for me to stay in class. And not trying to be a bad example, but I think for me is I was trying to find my purpose, right? Trying to see what exactly I feel very passionate about that I can really spend all my time in it. And it so happened to be gaming back then, and less about study. And I think that kind of gave me the thing the idea, right, where when I get into college, one of the first things that I wanted to be out there is to really pursue a career, really to try to find, what is something that I really like and enjoy doing, especially when it comes to career, comes to work.
So
Um,
you were looking for a game, like a real world game that's more fun than Counter-Strike and other games.
I think so. Like I think so. It's kind of like problem solving. Even when I'm playing games Counter Strike, I was a team captain, and I was once trying to bring it to the level of representing the country to compete with the other world champions. And it's a lot
Hey,
about
at the
people.
time, Eric, don't worry, I jump on that, right? Because that's fascinating to me. Because I played my fair share of Counter Strike and other games at the time, but I was definitely one of the worst people. And I think eventually I just, like there's no clan that actually even wanted me because I was so poor at the game. But clearly you had a very different path. Which country were you afraid of when you were to represent Malaysia in Counter Strike and to fight with another country?
Oh yeah, and I think if people follow back then, Counter Strike started off with Europe being very strong, and then you have like guys like Sweden, Finland. They are all like the top in the world, right? And there's no YouTube, right? So you kind of download the demos and you watch it replay on your PC, and then that's how I learned about the things. I think that the interest is there, so we would spend like the whole day just to practice how to buy equipment as fast as possible, so we can get out in positions. And those are the kind of stuff that when you are passionate, right, you just keep spending time practicing and try to be the best in it, right? So and that mentality kind of flows into everything that I do from there on. When I go to college, I study accounting. I didn't see it as something that I really liked. Second year dropout, and then very quickly I found my first job. I think that's where I exactly found the true passion when it comes to work. Like through my first job, it was a digital marketing company, right? That's where I realized that everything technology becomes so disruptive, so interesting, and it brings a better service, better product in the market, which is something that I find really I enjoy myself in doing things like that, solving a really huge problem. And I think I noticed that in the early days, I was solving problems that is very dear to me, right? Something that I can relate to. It started from gaming and eventually into something technology. Yeah.
The interesting you said things something you said earlier was very interesting to me. It's like at least when in the game, the first person shooter game that we played back then, right? For Counter Strike, you would try to buy weapons quickly so you could get in a position. And once you're kind of like camping, so to speak, in that position, right? And it like we just get the upper hand. I feel like I resonate with that in life as well because when I was 15 years old and high school wasn't as interesting, what was taught in class wasn't as interesting to me, but the internet was. And so when I started to teach myself and learn from friends, like how to build websites and how to start building web projects, a lot of ways, I think something that maybe you and I didn't know it in time, but we were actually getting into position. when you left your accounting degree and just dropped out of college altogether to pursue internet, you were getting into position.
Yeah,
And because
yeah.
you went into digital marketing at that era, right, the internet would have about 400 million users. Today it's about 3 to 4 billion, right? But at the time it's got maybe 2, 3, 400 million users, and most of them are in the US. But internet had this magnetism to it because each and every day, everyone got like new friends got onto it and they were raving about this amazing stuff they do on the internet, right? And at the time, I think with ad buying, right, you could just like pay cents and then you could reach millions of Malaysians overnight. And then you could measure every single eyeball, you could measure every single conversion. It's like you had this reach which is unparalleled and it's quite affordable. So I
Yeah.
feel like you getting into position for digital marketing, that's getting into a very, very prime position that has a lot of advantage for you. So maybe
Yeah.
let's bounce on that a little bit. Like you mentioned you joined where did you join? How did you traverse like digital marketing and eventually to Carsome?
Well, I think there's a very long journey, right? Like how that transit. But maybe
Oh,
before that,
we got a good 25 minutes over here, and we and I think this is
yeah,
quite valuable actually, right, for us to kind of
it
talk
is, it
about
is,
because
it
this
is.
guy this
And I want
nobody's
to
gonna
talk
talk
about
about it, right? So we might as well
yeah,
talk about it.
and I really want to talk about it. And I think first, since it's a fireside chat, like to ask you the question as well. Like, it's a lot of unknown to me, like how
Yeah.
you transit from exact same school and being as one of the very early entrepreneur in Malaysia, right? Getting to like cruise more and the youth Asia. So like really like to know how that happened for you because you're an investor to me right now, but at the same time in the early days you was that guy that I aspired to be, right? To pursue a startup career. So I'd like to hear from you as well, like how that happened.
Yeah, that's very, very kind words here. At the time, like I think that right now I'm like learning so much from you and everyone, right? So I think that's definitely get that. Uh, I think that the earlier days, right, of pursuing we'll use that word like getting in a position since it's fun thing that we chance upon. Um, I similar to yourself, like I'm just like I don't even know where I'm headed. So the biggest existential undercurrent, right, is that I'm excited, but I don't know where it's headed. And so it's like when I first was able to publish something, and back then Web 2.0 people could comment, tag cloud, and all that, right? I sat in front of the computer and I just like 19 hours in a row just building the first website, and it was to discuss. It was like a forum for Command and Conquer Red Alert at the time, right? So it was like it's like a discussion forum to post strategies, right? It was you like I knew that this was going to be so big, but I just didn't know what my role was in it and how. I just knew I had to follow it. So how that transited through college as well is to build websites for folks. I also wanted more money as well. Like SMDJ. I mean, a lot of folks over there, like some of them may be more wealthy, but I don't know about yourself, but I certainly didn't feel like I was in a comfortable family, but it wasn't like flush with money. And I feel like my parents didn't really want me to feel like I had a lot of money either. So hence like my comparative allowance was very low, right? So hence a lot of building websites was a chance to make money. And so throughout college and university, a lot of that is just like freelancing just to make money, but always staying very close to the web. How that eventually went from building products and building websites to building companies is like a very natural transition because we are in the position of creativity. We're seeing what's next and then we can actually like build stuff. But I would readily admit that like I didn't know where I was headed. Later on, after I built and sold those two companies, I was turning 30, you can say this midlife crisis, renaissance, whatever you call it. I also didn't know where I was headed. Angel investing, I also don't know. When I first started investing in my first angel investment also is SMK DJ friend, Cheng, from
Yeah,
iMoney,
yeah,
right?
correct.
Cheng from iMoney, right? So, I don't know, right? He came to my living room, I designed the logo for iMoney, built the web, I got a freelancer, built the first version of iMoney, and we're just whack on right? Living room became incubator, we just whack on. We don't know where it's headed. When you first came to me and you said, hey, wow, Carsome, right? I mean, we crossed paths a bit in Inity, which is super funny, right? And I think
Yeah.
for the audience who didn't know, so Joel and I, when we were building Sales.com as well as GroupSmall at the time, we were invited by Inity, which were in the same office in Kelana Square, to explore an acquisition. They wanted to buy up our company. And this Inity company is public listed tech company who was backed by Mark Cheng of Job Street, right? So you can see how the connection points between the ecosystem was like. So the bosses at Inity at the time had invited us, and we were exploring to cement the acquisition. And then Eric was working in Inity at the time, and there's a lot of like
My
early
first job.
Inity,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of the early Inity folks are some a lot pioneers in the Malaysian internet scene at the time as well. So I think that's another time that you and I crossed paths. But to your question, right? Like we didn't know where I was headed, but we knew it was exciting, and we just kept going. Something didn't work, we just kept going, kept going, kept going. So when I met you, right, and we were talking about, I remember the first version of Carsome was to sell new cars, not used cars, right? You're doing
Exactly.
lead generation for new cars at the time,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think I don't know if that kind of answered your question, but I feel like the main thread is that we would just kept exploring what we felt was the right thing to do for us at the time.
Yeah, it did. And I think that's exactly the same path that we took, right, when we started Carsome. Like we do not know whether this is the best solutions that fits what the customer wants, but we continue to innovate, right? Continue to find the real pain points and all. And I think that is something that got us to where we are today. Like I can draw a lot of like similarity between your starting point and mine, right? Where we enjoy solving really hard problems
Yeah.
because we see a problem that can be solved, and there's something that we are capable of doing it, and we try to find solutions out of it. And I think started from my first job where we first met in Unity. I think after a few years, I very quickly saw that in the ad industry, it lacks. It has a problem where a lot of ad inventory are bought in a very manual basis, right? You aggregate and then you try to sell it to an audience, specific audience segment. But I saw like how technology can change the way we buy ads, right? Especially right now, you have real-time bidding, programmatic buy, where every ad purchase is just split seconds. So and I saw that that's actually the first company I built. It's not Carsome is the third company. So the first company I built is to create an app technology that helps do real-time bidding on ad banners and inventory online and project and sell it to advertisers, right? So that was the kind of the first, I think, hard problem that I observed that in my business that I can create a business to solve it. And it worked. And after a year plus, we sold the company off. And I went on to my second business, a second try, which is also a second try for being a part of gaming again, which I saw like there's a lot of big mobile gaming companies like Supercell, Cheng, they're doing. So I wanted to do something that, hey, coming from Malaysia, a global mobile gaming company that can become really huge, right? So I created a mobile game studio, published like 3 games, and then like there's puzzle game, there's also strategy game and things like that. I think it didn't kind of really hit me as much as I like to play games. It didn't kind of really stick in a sense where I feel this is really contributing to something really big, right? And I think the moment when I found the idea of Carsome, then I realized that this is something that I really want to stick on and spend the next like 10, 20, 30 years to really fix what I saw in the market. Yeah.
So you shut down your own mobile gaming company.
I shut it down and I went on to pursue Carsome almost immediately. I think one of the things that I saw is like um, the market of car trading is there's a lot of frictions. There's a lot of uncertainties in the process. Like anyone ask them, how's your experience in buying a car in the market, especially used car? It was never a great experience, right? And there's a lot of distrust in the process where I think that's where we aspire to really solve this. Car being the second biggest asset class in the region, right, after real estate, is also a very huge market. So we wanted to do something very meaningful in it, and that's how we started.
No, that's very interesting you say about shutting your own company down, because I think it's something that maybe not many people know as well. Before I built my says.com, right, the media company, we actually had something called Youth Says, which was a online research panel. Essentially, you could ask questions and get answers, right, for surveys and all that. So while I was nerding out because I love research, I love data, it was very exciting to me. But 2 years doing it, and it was a profitable company, but we also kind of like tapered it down and eventually shut down that business in pursuit of media. Which is interesting, right? Like when you shut down something that's working, that's like a weird thing, I mean, like shutting down something that's not working, okay lah, I guess like you've got some good reasons to do it, right? But shutting down something that's working in pursuit of something that's much bigger but unproven, right? I just discovered you and I have another weird quirk because we both have that craziness to be able to do that, right? But it's interesting. Secondly, you talked about innovating around customer pain points. Because for me, like, although it sounds crazy to kind of wind down a research company in pursuit of a media company, I was also trying to innovate around customer pain points. I asked my advertisers at the time, and then like a big props to a lot of the early backers, early advertisers, right? Folks like Kuka Kun of Nestle, right? Like he was like giving a lot of budget to like early innovators in ad tech. And I'm sure Nestle gave a lot of budget for Inity at the time as well. But I asked him, I said, hey, I got some money from your research budget, and I feel like I want to grow more revenues, right? What else can I do for you? He said, well, my research budget is like this, but my advertising budget is like this. And social media, we're not getting enough young people. Maybe you can help me with that, right? And that kind of really kind of clocked into, okay, sis.com. And because news I felt was completely broken, myself and anyone I knew at the time at the age, we weren't reading the news, online news. We weren't reading offline news or online news at all. Super dry. And I thought that we could present a more catchy format, and then more people would actually be engaged with what's going on. So trying to like innovate around customer pain points, solving like a bigger problem and a bigger problem and a bigger problem. I feel like that's a good segue to bring us into our next chapter. We really milked a good 10 minutes. I hope audiences who are listening now realize, right, that when we talk about building an ecosystem, we owe it to like our parents, we owe it to whatever they did right and wrong, our friends, good influence, bad influence, our teachers, the teachers we escaped, the teachers we loved, the schools, right? We brought up in rough, simple, comfortable, whatever it is. All that is actually ecosystem. All of that is actually habitat. All of that actually created the foundations of who we are and shaped who we are today, right? And some of you are excellent students who aced it. Kudos to you. Some of you who like found your way or lost your way. I hope all of us today get to realize that we can embrace all of that and really have gratitude for everything that's ever happened to us, because this is who we are today. And so that's a good segue to who we are today. Like, I'm trying to solve some really big problems. You are trying to solve some really big problems. And it's crazy enough that we just keep seeing the problems get bigger and bigger, and we just keep wanting to solve them, right? Yeah. Tell me what is occupying your mind now. Carsome is like in the $1 billion club. It's Malaysia's first unicorn. It is built from scratch, right? With you and Jun-Yi and the rest of your friends, who came together to do this. Like, what is on your mind? What are you trying to solve now? Like, just give me a long laundry list, right? The day in the life of Eric right now, right? Like, what are things that keep you up? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think I want to kind of go back to, how everything started, right? Like, the moment that I know that I want to create and start my own company, it kind of comes from that understanding, like, looking through your journey, Joe's journey and Cheng's journey as well. I think that gives a lot of inspiration that if someone that I know is able to do something like this, it helps to also give you the conviction, right, that you should try and go and pursue it. And, then kind of kickstart my entire career of being an entrepreneur. And then very soon, like with Carsome, what I found out is like there is a very big pain point in the market, very critical pain point where people don't enjoy buying a car, and there's so much frictions, and we created the solutions to cater for that, just to make sure that making our customers better off, while at the same time we build a business out of it. I think what gets a lot tougher as we go, like we've been in the business for 6 years now, and it still feels like we're in the first year. I think the reason is that we see so much problem in the market that there's yet to be tackled. Like for us, is we started off with trying to change the way how people buy and sell cars in the market. We did that. We expanded from Malaysia, and we have our operations in Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore. That we are looking to explore more as well. But as it is, we're already one of the largest in terms of like car trading, right, in the region. But we see a lot of other frictions at the same time. Like being a unicorn is a validation of the kind of thing that we have done over the past couple of years. Is one of the important milestones. But it was never the goal in the beginning that, hey, we want to be a unicorn, right? Like to us, we see it as one of the things that we will obtain along the way if we become successful. But I think fundamentally more important for us is how do we continue to solve pain points in the market as we see it. And to us is when we look at the used car market, we look at how car trading and even car ownership is being done right now, it's not at the level that we are satisfied. Right. So we want to continue to build a platform that caters not just for car trading, not just for you to buy and sell cars, but when it comes to financing, the after sales, the insurance, everything, right? Because that's where people still continue to face and have challenges, right? That they would tell you, hey, why don't you also do this? And I think to us is we see that as a really big opportunity. We see that this kind of problems that exist in the market when no one is interested in solving, we are very keen to take on. And eventually, once we build a solutions around it, and people are happy with our service. So the kind of core values that we obtain, like we just talk about that within the leadership team in Carsome, like what do we value the most? Like customer experience, customer happiness is the kind of thing that would make us feel like we're doing a good job. And whether it's on the technology front, whether it's on the way we serve our customers, on the physical outlets, we want to be able to translate all of this belief into what we offer. And I think that would bring the business very far. Because that would create a very sustainable business, right? As
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
10 to 20 years, because you are focused on customer, not focused on how I get the number to times 2 times 3, because these are the things that would come as you provide a very solid solutions in the market.
No, it's very sobering, like to have this repeated over and over again in just about any conference everywhere, because it's very easy for folks who are observing the tech ecosystem to lose their way and think and kind of go on this ego trip, right? Of like building bigger and bigger valuations and so on and so forth, right? I think that second kind of like ego trap, I wouldn't say ego trip, right? So ego trap, right? Of like just chasing big valuations. The second one is the ego trap of innovation, which I'll get to in a bit. But what I do admire about what you've done and who you are, right, Eric, is that I remember one time I was called up by a partner of one of the most respected VC firms. I'm not going to say who, right? So we went for dinner and he's like the main dude, right? And he was complaining to me that you didn't want to get him into the round, right? So I'm not going to name which firm it is, right? But it's like one of the world's best, right? And then, and a lot, and the conversation was interesting because I know you're not like a valuation person. That's not who you are, right? And what I told him was that this company is on like a rocket ship ride and it has to be adequately financed, So, we need enough money to solve the problems we want to solve. That's what it's about. So if you want to be part of this, you're going to pony up that cash. And if you're not willing to, that's totally okay, right? And so it's not about the valuation. This problem needs to be solved. The money is not for you, the money is for all your staff members that you need to hire, all the programmers you need to hire, all the investments in data that you've been making. And to see from that moment on that dinner in Singapore, all the way to what Carsome has been now, right? I've never seen anyone turn away that VC before in my life. I've never seen any of my companies do that, right? But for you, like you knew what you need to solve and you went for it. The interesting thing today, and what I think a lot of people might not know, is that Carsome is probably one of the most data hungry companies that I've worked with. And just when you talk about customer happiness, maybe you can talk a bit more about the net promoter scores, all the different metrics you get at different points. It almost feels like you have like your own Google Analytics built throughout every step of the way of Carsome. And that to me is like very impressive.
Yeah. I think we see this business as a business driven by data, right? Partly because when you look at the used car market or any used car, any cars on the road, as soon as you are driving it, the conditions start to be very different. And from the age of the car to the brand model, even if the color is the same, but when it comes into the platform, we have to be able to differentiate, right? What is the right price in order for us to determine, and how at the same time, when people are very mindful of how much they are buying and selling, we continue to offer that great experience to them. So the only way to really do that consistently across like different locations is you have a data sets to work with to be able to give a well-informed decision. Like people want a transparency, right? People want to you're not just giving a good service, but if you give a shitty price, then it defeats the purpose as well, right? They still brand you as a really bad company. So I think to us is we want to be able to make sure by building the foundation in the early years that using the data that we gather, the activities through the the matching of supply and demand, while we build the volume, it helps us to understand better as well, like what is the right price for us to offer. And we extend from like 1 or 2 popular models all the way to kind of cover almost all the models that we see in the market. And that helps bring up the experience, right? Because while we are very, very much believe into giving good service, giving a product that is exactly what a customer want. We also want to be driven by data to help us optimize so that we can convert as people come onto the platform. And that's where the data team becomes very important. Like we have our own data team led by our chief data officer Piyush, and we have a CTO who is also very big on data. We look at the growth metrics. All of this kind of combine into the end result, which is when every customer sells a car to us, we measure the NPS score. And right now, our NPS score is at about 70 to 80 to like even 90 sometimes. So comparing to the industry benchmark, like CarMax is the biggest branded used car dealers in the US, right? They sell millions of cars every year. Their NPS score is 10. So that's the industry benchmark for used car, right? And I think that's where we are trying to do it. Like we don't want to be a 20, you don't want to be a 30, we want to be the best. And there are ways to get there. You don't get there from day one, but you kind of build along the way. But the belief has to be there in the day one, right? That this is the deliver. And it gets harder as you try to deliver it as an individual compared to building a team, building like a massive organization, deliver that together.
I think that a lot of folks can, of course, understand. We got about 4 minutes left, so I definitely want to build a lot more into looking into the future. But I think to kind of cap off what we think about today, right? The part about measuring, right? I love it. The fact that when you get a car sold or bought to service center, how quickly they check, how many seconds to check all the 100 things that you got to check, or how quickly a customer gets to respond. Like every single step of the process, you're counting time. Because it reminds me of how you're practicing every single day back then in Counter-Strike to buy the weapons really quickly. Right? It's the same thing. Like each and every step, you optimize every second, right? To get that advantage, right? And the end product is the net promoter score, which means the customer wins.
Yeah.
So going into the future, right? You and I, we talk a lot about offline about how to build an enduring company. And a lot of the companies that 500 has backed here in Southeast Asia, the same thing happens for us where it's, of course, important to talk about the unicorns as successes. Like the first 21 investments that we invested in 2014 in Southeast Asia, there's 6 unicorns in there. And it's important to talk about that 2015 vintage. There's one unicorn out of there. There's another one that's coming soon. So we know that there's a unicorn factory that's at work here with 500. And we are measuring a lot of things and trying to be very data centric. And we're even installing a lot of ESG metrics right now, so that more and more of our companies are measuring not just their financial impact, but also their social, environmental, and how they actually look at governance. So we're trying to measure more things because we want it to be a repeatable unicorn factory, not just because we want to produce unicorns, but because unicorns have the power and the responsibility to make a massive difference in your staff, in your customers, and also the country. A lot of governments go to a lot of our unicorns and say, hey, can you fix our problems? Right now, Eric, what you've done for your customers, why your customers are coming to you and your company is because you fix their problems. And they're happily going to give you more problems for you to fix. so innovation is kind of led by your customers in that sense. They're telling you what to do, right? Now, in terms of building an enduring company, what are the foundations today that are most important for Carsome?
Yeah. I think it's always about the people, right? Like right now, at the size of Carsome, we've grown from like in the beginning 5 people to now about 2,500 people. Spread across different locations. Some are even in China now. Some is in Europe. I think one thing to kind of hold together everyone to deliver that belief, right, is we first have to really champion internally. Like if we are just showcasing on the front where customer experience is what we are trying to deliver, and we want customers to be happy. Our internal people, our own employees are not even happy with working in Carsome. It wouldn't reflect a good experience externally. So, and that kind of starts from, what is the culture of Carsome? What do we do? What is the why in the business that get us going, right? And this has to be translated within the business. I find myself increasingly, doing that right now within the business and trying to champion. And a lot of initiatives kind of come from that. Like in last year pandemic, we had the first lockdown, no business, no car being traded. We wanted to do something meaningful and try to upskill our people. That's where we came out with Carsome Academy, which we are now training a lot of external students and all, because we first saw how we benefit from that. Our own internal people becoming a lot more ready when lockdowns removed. We started to build a business, recover within 2 months. And everything just growing from there. But the important thing is that once we validate it within the business, right, the idea, the solution, we want to, extend it to the outside business. And to us, is right now, car trading is kind of the thing that we are already doing. We are extending that into the entire ownership journey, where we continue to deliver that peace of mind. The keywords, here, especially in the used car market, is the trust and the convenience. And for us, is we see that as, how do we deliver the peace of mind to you? If we can do that and we tackle the real problem in the market, people in between would champion it. Then people outside, when they use our service, will spread the word of mouth. That gives us that, the network effect, the flywheel, right?
Yeah. Because you got your internal flywheel with your own staff. You got the flywheel with your vendors, your partners. You got the flywheel of trust and NPS with your customers. We're running into time, but we're just landed on the crescendo of this conversation. So we're going to push Wild Digit to see how far before they kick us off, right? And I want to kind of bring it together in, I think, three very powerful themes. The first one that thank you so much for repeating over and over again for all the entrepreneurs and investors over here. We're chasing customer pain points. We're eating these customer pain points for breakfast, lunch and dinner and snack and a bit of supper before we go to bed. Okay. We're hunting down the pains in the world and we're fixing them. So to build an enduring company, follow the customer. Your customers are atomic unit. So I think that is one thing that sounds like the Carsome DNA that you've repeated a lot. Now, the second one is, people say over and over again, it's about people. And I love the way you're building Carsome culture, because I see it on LinkedIn. Not what you're saying, but your staff are saying. Because I know some of your staff members, right? So I follow them on LinkedIn, and they are raving about Carsome culture. They're recruiting publicly on what they care about, what they love about Carsome, and they're being super authentic and real about it. So your own staff is raving about your own company on their social media channels. How many companies can say that, right? That is very beautiful. So I think enduring companies, one's customer, second one is your company culture. Now, the third one, which I love about Carsome Academy, is that when I saw Carsome Academy, when Junie shared it with me, right, and your co-founder Junie shared it with me, and I was like looking through it, I was like, wow, this is such a game changer. All the people in anyone who's never succeeded in school, who's never graduated, who's never kind of like made it because their ecosystem, right, or their environment didn't give them that chance, Carsome is accepting them to learn and be trained to work at Carsome with no money down. Carsome literally loans you to go and learn in Carsome Academy, and you're going to get a guaranteed job at the end of 14 months, with a salary of 2,000 ringgits or more, which is amazing for somebody who may not have education. And then you just work and pay it back, and then you'll be part of the Carsome family. So I was like sending it to all the folks that my wife and I work with, that we know, right, who are living in PPR flats and, some of the urban, and because you see, the last thing for enduring company in our observation, right, and I want to really give you real examples here. Canva, we cut a first check in Canva. It's one of our top performing investments. They're worth $40 billion. The founders gave away a third of their business, a third of their shares, to create the Canva Foundation. It's like easily the biggest foundation in Australia right now, charitable foundation. They gave away their own founder shares, 30% of it, right, into it. So we got them on a call with Anthony and Chloe from Grab, of course, right, to just like connect and chit chat, because Grab, they are doing Grab for good. Like Anthony and Chloe personally, they've been charitable even before they begin this journey, right? It's just who they are. The bigger you get, the more you have to give more than you take. You just got to give more than you take. Even with your staff members, you got to give more than you take. So I think the final thing to build an enduring company, in my observation, is what you're doing with Carsome Academy. And a lot of the more things I know you and I have talked about and planned about, Carsome can really be a beacon of how the capitalism is done right. We will be the biggest company that has such a net positive effect on society in every step of our vendors, partners, and customers. And we'll be that shining example of how to do it right. It's not about the unicorn. I think it's a lot about giving more than you take. So customer obsession, culture obsession, and the last one is giving more than you take. What do you think about that as 3 steps to build an enduring company?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like exactly right. One of the reasons why I'm here today is because of you, because of a lot of people who went on to the same path and they share their experience, like without any reason to share. Like just really want to pay it forward and help. And I see how personally I benefit from it. And to me, it's like having that community to support your dreams, support you in pursuing something that is meaningful to the market. I think that's something that all of us should continue to contribute. And that's how great companies, is being created, right? And becoming a more enduring one as you go. So yeah, you put it in a really nice way to end the session today.
Yeah, you are, and the time that you're taking amidst your schedule to kind of jam on this, like we just can't stop giving, So I hope all of the investors and entrepreneurs over here, you just remember this conversation, right? Because all the ecosystem that we're in right now is the best damn ecosystem in the whole universe because it's ours and it's unique to us, and we're gonna make it so damn good for everybody else, and that's why we're here. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you Walt Digital for always being a platform for just some real talk and real heart to heart. And thank you so much, Eric. And we keep this
Likewise.
conversation
Thank you.
going. Everybody, have a great Friday and have a restful and safe weekend.
Yeah, everyone. Bye.